Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to welcome you to this session on the business continuity management and its awareness. As you all are aware, business continuity management is a topic that is now being spoken about much more than it was in the past. It all started with the incident of the 9/11. Though it was not the most pleasant incident for many people, however, it has a lot of lessons for businesses today. What happened in this particular incident was that in the Twin Towers, there were 650 odd businesses working there, and in about 18 months' time, 550 of them closed down. That's a lesson for the business community, and this was the starting point for businesses globally to think about what business continuity is all about. We are familiar with disruptions, and we are familiar with disruptions such as the floods. We are familiar with things like earthquakes or tsunamis. We have also experienced things like the SARS epidemic. We've experienced fires and so on. We have had terrorism as something that affects businesses as well. When we consider all of these having a potential to disrupt businesses, the present way that we do our business needs to be relooked. What has happened is that we are more and more reliant on supply chains. Supply chains have become more extended. They are becoming much more extensive, as well as it is including a lot of new partners in this entire supply chain. If a company supplying to some other company is not able to supply, therefore there is going to be business disruption, and we therefore need to look at disruptions much more carefully than ever before. Just consider the SARS epidemic, which happened a few years ago. It affected the Southeast Asian countries. At that time, I used to travel to Singapore. Not that I would very much love to travel at that time, but I was forced to travel because those countries were reporting into me. When I went to Singapore, you would definitely expect that the airport, the Changi Airport, if you've been there, you'll be familiar. Most of you would have been visiting Changi Airport, and you would see thousands and thousands of people. But during the SARS epidemic, you could hardly see anybody walking in the airport. And for a nation like Singapore, which is highly dependent on their trade, you would find that they were completely affected. Their businesses were disrupted, and there was a huge amount of financial impact on this particular country. And that is why the Singapore government also considers business continuity in a much more stronger and a more careful way. Think about the floods. When you think about Bombay, we hear about the floods in Bombay again this year. However, if you think back in July 27th of 2005, when suddenly there was flash flooding. So it has a huge impact, a huge cascading impact. Business continuity, therefore, plays a much more important role today. Some of the disruptions we almost forgot. Think about WorldCom. WorldCom was a big company in the US, and before it went bust, it was the second largest telecom provider in the United States. So this was one of the disruptions that can happen to anybody. And why did it collapse? It collapsed because of a financial fraud. And the systems were not in place because at that time there was nobody checking so carefully on how the reporting and accounting systems were being handled and how transparent they were. Another example was Enron. Enron was a similar case where, due to financial fraud, they just collapsed. However, an interesting thing was, just think about a very, very important name called Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen vanished, completely disappeared, and it disappeared because of a problem with Enron, right? So therefore, you just imagine if these businesses were supplying to one another, what kind of impact it happens. Another example, a few of you might remember that Raj Kumar, a very popular movie actor in Karnataka, he died, and he died a natural death at the age of 77. And when he died, there were riots in Bangalore. The entire city had come to a standstill. There was arson, there was burning of buses, and so on. And there were people who were stopping others from walking around, and so on. So there was complete chaos. And just imagine that happened in a city called Bangalore. And Bangalore happens to be the IT center for India. Though, however, we have other cities who are equally important, but Bangalore is the brand name for the Indian IT industry. And by the way, this particular the news reportage of this particular incident was so extensive all across the world. People started to wonder whether it is safe to do business with India, because such kind of absolutely unheard of incidents can just spark off without any kind of